Well, joining me now to discuss is Joe Macaron. He's a global fellow with the Wilson Center's Middle East program. It's such a pleasure to have you with us today. First, help us understand what happened in Lebanon 50 years ago and how the war began.
There was tension. There was Palestinian faction basically trying to have a safe haven to fight Israel at that time. Lebanon was in the midst of the Arab-Israeli conflict. And then you have the Christian militia who were supported by the West, by especially and by Israel at some point in the 80s, were refusing basically that, and they wanted Lebanon to be more neutral in what's happening in the Arab-Israeli conflict. So there was a known as a bus attack in the suburb of Beirut, and basically it became the symbol of on April 13 that triggered the civil war that already began a few years before, but was a trigger point, basically. So it was partly a problem of power sharing in Lebanon. There was imbalance in the power sharing. Part of it was the Arab-Israeli conflict. And part of it are structural problems in the system itself that cannot, till now, basically handle managing conflict between main factions. So those are basically the main triggers of the civil war.
And how did the war change then Lebanon politically and socially? Because the aftermath of the war has altered the country's trajectory, hasn't it? I mean, both in terms of internal political crises and the wider regional instability as well.
Of course, I mean, this civil war created many layers of wars at the same time. There was between the state and the factions, inside the community faction themselves. One faction against, as we saw it with the Syrian, against a certain Syrian troops against a certain after assassinating Kamal Jumblat. So we have different layers of wars. That were happening. So eventually, what happened is the demarcation of confessions. So we have now the Christians area very clear, the Shiite area, the Sunnis. This was part of product of the dividing line of the civil war. We didn't have as much as mixed region as before. And also, you have the 1990 Taif Accord, who basically changed, removed the power, the absolute power from the Maronite president, and distributed in the Sunni prime minister and the cabinet, and also the parliament speaker, which is a more balanced Christian Sunni Shiite or Maronite Sunni Shiite distribution of power. But the way it ended the war, it didn't give reconciliation, it didn't give peace. There was an end of violence, but there was no civil peace. In that sense, the same warlords became the leaders and the rulers of the peace till now. So there was no real reconciliation to close this page, have some real self-reflection of what happened.
And this war, continues to reverberate in Lebanon's collective consciousness, doesn't it? How do the different generations remember the war today, and are the communities still divided today?
Definitely, the generation who lived the war, they are still in this mindset. But I think at the same time, they understand the impact. They understand how difficult it was. But I think we have a new generation who basically moved beyond. We're seeing a lot of marriage between religion, especially the young generation. We saw what happened in the uprising. So I think the younger generation have a different view. They don't have the same complexes of the old generation who knows the taboos and who was always worried about what should say or not. I think the younger generation moved beyond, but doesn't mean that the roots of tension, the roots of civil war is not there in the mindset. We see it in the government tension. We see it in the street. We see it what's happening in the south of Lebanon. So there's a lot to be done, basically. So every community feels present, feel appealed or part of the state. But definitely, I think Lebanon moved beyond a lot of things that happened, but the mindset is still there. And there should be more work from the government in that sense.
And just lastly and briefly, if you will, as we're unfortunately running out of time, President Joseph Aoun says Lebanon should learn the lessons from the war. What does he mean by these lessons? And is there a risk then of a similar conflict breaking out again?
I think he's trying to link it to the issue of the weapons of Hezbollah. He's sending a message that we should be aware that, those things led to previous wars, that he's just linked it to the current political context, that we should learn from the lesson that any weapons beyond the weapon of the state will create problems down the road. It's expected from his rhetoric. He's trying to link both ways, but I don't think you see any threat. There's no threat of civil war now because there's no foreign power supporting. There's only Hezbollah who's armed. The rest are not willing to fight. But I think it's just linking it to the current context.
Joe, that's all we have time for. But thank you very much for sharing your insights with us on the program today.